Careful, don't let her see that jollof rice, Lilian said loudly, waving at a waiter. She might propose to it. The table beside them burst into laughter. Rachel's hand froze on the back of her chair. She hadn't even ordered yet. She hadn't even said a word. She forced her lips into a smile, the kind she'd practiced for years, the kind that hid 1,000 silent screams. Sit now, don't be shy, Lilian said, patting the seat beside her, grinning at the man across the table. Rachel, meet Tosing. Tosing, meet my best friend, the queen of buffets. If food was a career, this babe would be richer than Dangote. The restaurant tittered again. Rachel sat down slowly, her stomach tightening. She reached for the menu just to have something to hold, something to hide behind. Tosing didn't laugh. He shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening, his eyes flicking toward Lilian and then to Rachel with something that looked almost like an apology. Lilian, he said quietly, that's not funny. Ah, relax now. She knows I'm joking, right, Rachel? Lilian squeezed her arm, too tight, too rehearsed. Rachel's throat burned. Yeah, she whispered, just joking. But she wasn't laughing. Nobody who truly loved her would find that funny. Not once, not for years, not since primary school when the boys called her football because of her size, not since her aunties whispered behind cupped hands at family functions, not since she learned to shrink herself in every room she entered so no one would notice how much space her body took up. She excused herself before the food arrived, mumbling something about the restroom. And once she was outside, once the cool Asaba evening air hit her face, she let the tears fall freely, silently, the way she'd learned to cry, without sound, without witnesses, without anyone ever finding out how much it hurt. What Lilian didn't know was that this one cruel joke, tossed out like seasoning for a Saturday afternoon conversation, would cost her the most valuable relationship of her life. If you've ever been laughed at by someone who was supposed to love you, stay with this story till the end, because what happens to Rachel next will remind you why your peace is worth more than any friendship built on humiliation. Drop a like if you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people who claimed to care about you. And subscribe because this story only gets more powerful from here. Rachel Iche grew up in Umuaji, a quiet town where everyone knew everyone, where her family's name carried weight because her parents owned 3 thriving businesses, a chain of provision stores, a transport company, and a small hotel that hosted every important event in town. She never lacked anything money could buy. New clothes every season, the best schools, a driver who dropped her off and picked her up daily. But no amount of comfort could shield her from the one thing that shaped her childhood more than anything else, her weight. She was a big child and then a bigger teenager, and the world never let her forget it. Relatives at family gatherings would look at her, then look at her slimmer cousins and sigh audibly. Ah, if only she took after her mother's side, one aunt used to say, right in front of her, as though Rachel were a piece of furniture that couldn't hear. Classmates called her names that stuck to her like glue, names she still heard in her sleep sometimes, years later. Family friends, the ones who claimed to love her parents, would offer their unsolicited advice at every visit. Just try Gary and water for 1 week, you'll see results. You're a pretty girl, but the weight is spoiling it. Nobody asked how those words made her feel. Nobody cared. By the time she was 16, Rachel had built walls so high around her heart that she convinced herself she simply wasn't the kind of girl people genuinely liked. Not really, not without a reason attached, pity, guilt, or some benefit they hoped to gain. She told herself this so often it became truth. She stopped expecting real friendship. She stopped believing she deserved it. When admission letters came and she got into a university in Benin City, she allowed herself just for a moment to hope. New city, new faces. Maybe here nobody would know her story. Maybe here she could be someone else, someone people simply liked without conditions. It didn't happen. The first week of resumption, she sat alone in the cafeteria while groups of girls formed instantly around her, laughing, exchanging numbers, planning outings. She smiled at a group once, hoping to be invited in. They smiled back politely and continued their conversation without including her. In class, she raised her hand to contribute an answer, and a boy behind her muttered just loud enough for her to hear, "See as she won't yarn like she gets shape." The class laughed. She lowered her hand and never raised it again that semester. She ate lunch with her phone as company. She walked to lectures alone. She spent Friday night in her room listening to other students' laughter drifting up from the hostel compound below, wondering what it would feel like to be wanted somewhere by someone for no reason other than simply being her. She never stopped hoping, though. That was the tragic, beautiful thing about Rachel. No matter how many times the world rejected her, some small, stubborn part of her heart kept believing that somewhere, someone would see past her body and find her. She just didn't know yet that the first person who would seem to do that would also be the one to hurt her the most. It was during the second semester of her first year that Lilian Okoro walked into Rachel's life like sunlight breaking through months of grey clouds. They met in the most ordinary way, assigned to the same group project in a general studies class. Lilian was loud, funny, quick with jokes, the kind of girl who could make an entire lecture hall laugh with one comment. When their group met to discuss the assignment, Lilian sat beside Rachel, not across from her, not away from her, but right beside her, and asked her opinion first. "What do you think, Rachel? You are the smart one here. Abeg, guide us." Nobody had ever said something like that to her. Nobody had ever asked for her opinion first, like it mattered, like she mattered. Rachel felt something warm bloom in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years. Over the following weeks, Lilian began seeking her out. After class, in the hostel, during weekends, she'd knock on Rachel's door with snacks, gist about lecturers, stories about her family back in Wari. She made Rachel laugh, really laugh from the belly, the way she hadn't in longer than she could remember. For the first time since secondary school, Rachel had a friend. A real one, she believed. Someone who saw her, who chose her, who wanted to be around her simply because she enjoyed her company. She didn't know that behind her back, in the hostel corridor, Lilian was having an entirely different conversation. "Guy, that girl get money," Lilian told her roommate one evening, counting a wad of naira Rachel had given her earlier that same day for emergency transport money. "Her papa get business in 3 towns. She's lonely, nobody near her, nobody wants her, which means she'll hold on to anybody who shows her small attention. As long as I stay close to her, I swear I will never lack anything in this school." Her roommate laughed. "Guy, you wicked though." "It's not wickedness," Lilian shrugged, tucking the money into her bag. "Everybody they use somebody. She's just lucky it's someone who at least makes her laugh while doing it." Rachel never heard those words. She never saw the calculating look in Lilian's eyes when she counted the money, never noticed how Lilian's affection always seemed to arrive right before a request, never questioned why a girl this popular, this beautiful, this sought after by everyone on campus would choose to spend all her free time with her. She simply felt grateful, chosen, loved. And so she gave, freely, joyfully, without a single suspicious thought, because for the first time in her life, she had someone to give to. If you've ever poured your heart into a friendship without knowing the other person's true intentions, you already know where this story is headed. But stay with me, because Rachel's journey from being used to being unshakable is exactly the kind of glow-up we all need to witness. Like this video now if you believe genuine friendship should never come with a hidden agenda. And let's continue the story. The giving started small. The kind of small that feels like nothing at the time. "Rachel, I beg, my school fees deadline don't reach. My papa's business is not doing well this term," Lilian said one evening, sitting on the edge of Rachel's bed, her voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "I don't want to disturb you, but I don't know who else to ask." Rachel didn't hesitate. She transferred the money before Lilian finished her sentence. "You don't have to explain yourself to me. We're friends. What's mine is yours." Lilian hugged her tightly. "God bless you. I don't know what I would do without you." That single sentence, "I don't know what I would do without you," became Rachel's favorite sentence in the world. It made her feel needed, necessary, important to someone. She held on to it the way a starving person holds on to bread. The giving grew steadily after that. Rent for Lilian's family back in Wari when things got tight. New clothes for a wedding Lilian had been invited to. "I can't go looking like this. I beg, help me. I'll pay you back." Birthday celebrations, always elaborate, always funded quietly by Rachel, while Lilian received the compliments and the gifts. emergency expenses that appeared almost monthly, a vacation trip to Lagos that Rachel paid for entirely, telling herself it was worth it just to see Lilian's face light up, just to feel like someone's favorite person. By the time they graduated, Rachel had given more money to Lilian than she'd spent on herself in 4 years combined. And she never once complained, never once count cards. Because in her mind, this was what friendship looked like. This was what it meant to finally belong to someone. Her father, ever generous and unaware of the imbalance, helped both girls secure jobs at a reputable firm in Benin City through his business connections. "Any friend of my daughter's is family," he told Lilian warmly, shaking her hand. Lilian smiled sweetly and thanked him, already calculating how much further this connection could take her. Shortly after they started working, Lilian suggested they get an apartment together. "It will be perfect. We split everything, we save more, and we get to stay close." Rachel agreed immediately, thrilled at the idea of finally living with someone who wanted her around. But something shifted once they moved in. Lilian began inviting friends over without asking, filling the apartment with people Rachel barely knew, laughing loudly late into the night while Rachel tried to sleep before work. She used Rachel's kitchenware, her skincare products, her clothes without permission, and if Rachel ever mentioned it, Lilian would sigh dramatically. "Ah, Rachel, must you be this stingy? I thought we were past counting things between us." "I'm not counting," Rachel would say quietly, shrinking the way she always did. "I just wish you would ask first." "You are making this into something bigger than it is," Lilian would snap. And somehow, within minutes, Rachel would find herself apologizing for a complaint she never should have had to make in the first place. Money disappeared from Rachel's wallet more than once, and when she gently brought it up, Lilian's eyes would widen with practiced offense. "Are you accusing me of stealing from me after everything I've done for you? Do you know how many people would kill to have a friend as loyal as me?" And every single time, Rachel backed down. Because deep down, in the part of her mind, still shaped by every childhood insult, every rejection, every lonely Friday night in Benin City, she believed this was as good as it would ever get. A flawed friendship was still better than no friendship at all. Being used quietly felt safer than being alone loudly. If you've ever stayed in a one-sided relationship because you were terrified of being lonely again, comment "protect your peace" below, because Rachel's turning point is coming, and it starts with one dinner that changes everything. Subscribe now if you don't want to miss how this story unfolds. The apartment felt warm that evening, filled with the smell of jollof rice and the sound of Afrobeats playing softly from Lilian's phone. Tosin had come over for dinner. Lilian had been seeing him for a few months, proudly showing him off to colleagues as her serious boyfriend, a successful young architect with his own growing firm. Rachel had cooked, as she often did, humming quietly in the kitchen while Lilian entertained Tosin in the living room. She brought the food out, set the table, and was about to join them when Lilian's voice stopped her cold. "Guy, wait, make I show you something," Lilian giggled, already standing up. She waddled across the living room, puffing her cheeks out, imitating Rachel's walk with exaggerated, cruel precision. "This one na how Rachel dey enter kitchen when she hear say food done ready." Tosin didn't laugh. Lilian didn't notice, too pleased with her own performance. And when she dey chop, she mimed shoveling food into her mouth rapidly, cheeks bulging. Now whoa, nobody fit stop am. The silence in the room had a texture to it, thick and suffocating. Rachel stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, plate of jollof rice still in her hands, watching the person she called her best friend mock her body, her habits, her existence for the entertainment of a guest in the very apartment Rachel paid for. "Tosin, Lilian," his voice cut through the room, low and hard. "Stop." Lilian blinked, still smiling. Relax now, it's not just anything." Tosin stood up slowly, his jaw tight, his eyes moving to Rachel with something that looked almost like grief. "Why would you embarrass someone who has only shown you kindness? Someone who cooked this food you're about to eat? Someone who, from what I've seen, has done nothing but support you?" The room went utterly still. Lilian's smile finally faltered. "Tosin, don't make this a big..." "I've watched this for months," he said, quieter now, but no less firm.
The way you talk about her when she's not around, the way you talk about her when she is around. I thought maybe I was misreading it. I wasn't. He turned to Rachel, his expression softening entirely. I'm sorry, he said simply. You didn't deserve that. Then he picked up his jacket and walked out. Lilian stood in the middle of the living room, stunned, humiliated in a way she had never expected to be, not by Rachel, but by her own cruelty finally catching up to her in front of someone whose opinion she'd wanted to keep. She turned on Rachel instantly, her voice sharp with panic disguised as anger. You see what you've caused? You couldn't even laugh along for 1 minute. Now look what has happened. Rachel set the plate down slowly, her hands trembling, but her voice when it came was steadier than she expected. I didn't say a word, Lilian. You didn't have to. Your face, your energy, you always make things awkward. Rachel said nothing else. She simply walked to her room and closed the door quietly, the plate of rice still untouched on the dining table, the sound of Lilian pacing furiously in the living room fading behind her. She didn't cry that night. Something had shifted inside her, something small but undeniable. She had watched for the first time a complete stranger defend her more fiercely than her best friend of 6 years ever had. She didn't know yet that this was only the beginning of everything about to change. If you've ever had a stranger show you more respect than the people closest to you, like this video right now, because what happens between Rachel and Tosin next will show you exactly what real, patient love looks like. And don't forget to subscribe, because Rachel's transformation in the next part of this story is the reason millions of people are falling in love with her journey.
Months passed before Rachel saw Tosin again. She had almost convinced herself she never would, until one quiet Saturday afternoon, she ran into him at a small bookstore downtown, both of them reaching for the same novel on the shelf. You go first, he said, smiling, before recognition crossed his face. Rachel, right? She nodded, surprised he remembered her name. I owe you an apology, he said, setting the book down, his tone sincere in a way that caught her off guard. That night at your apartment, I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry it took that long, and I'm sorry for whatever she put you through before that. Rachel didn't know what to say, so she said the truth. Thank you for saying something at all. Nobody else ever has. They talked for nearly an hour that day, standing between bookshelves, and something easy passed between them. No flirting, no pressure, just two people genuinely enjoying a conversation. Over the following weeks, they began meeting occasionally. Coffee here, a walk there. Tosin never rushed anything, never made her feel like his attention came with strings attached. He asked about her work, her opinions, her dreams, things nobody had bothered asking in years. One afternoon, as they sat by the riverside, Tosin turned to her gently. Can I ask you something? And please don't take it the wrong way. Rachel braced herself, old wounds already aching in anticipation. Have you ever thought about becoming healthier? Not because anyone says you should, not to please anybody else, but because you deserve to feel your absolute best. He paused, then added quickly, firmly, and I need you to hear this part clearly. Whether you change anything or not, you will always deserve respect. Always. This is not about how you look to me or to anyone else. It's about how you feel waking up in your own body every single day. Nobody had ever separated those two things for her before. Worth and appearance. Every voice in her life had tangled them together since childhood, using her body as a measurement of her value. Tosin had just handed her something entirely different, permission to want change for herself without it meaning she'd been worthless before. That sentence didn't leave her. It followed her home that night, sat with her through her thoughts for days, until something inside her finally shifted, quietly but completely. She started small, morning walks around her estate before work, just 15 minutes at first, growing longer each week. She began cooking healthier meals, cutting down on the things that once comforted her during lonely nights. She joined swimming lessons, terrified the first day, standing at the edge of the pool in a swimsuit, feeling every old insecurity scream at her to leave, but she stayed.
She started therapy, finally speaking aloud the wounds she had carried silently since childhood, finally hearing a professional voice tell her that none of it had ever been her fault. There were setbacks. Days she skipped her walk and cried instead. Days she looked in the mirror and heard her auntie's voices instead of her own. But each time she got back up because for the first time she wasn't doing this to earn love from anyone else. She was doing it because she had finally decided she deserved her own. Months passed. Her body changed gradually, yes, but the real transformation was invisible to the eye. She laughed louder now, freely, without checking who was watching. She spoke up in meetings at work, her ideas finally reaching the ears they deserved. She made new friends, real ones this time, people who liked her simply because she was easy to be around, warm, funny, kind. She stopped apologizing for taking up space in rooms. She got promoted at work, and somewhere along the line, her growing friendship with Tosin quietly, gently became something more. Lilian noticed everything from a distance, and it ate her up. She noticed Rachel's new energy, her new wardrobe, the way people complimented her at work functions they both attended. She noticed Rachel no longer called her for every little thing, no longer needed her the way she used to. The imbalance had flipped, and Lilian couldn't stand it. She began asking around, prying into Rachel's personal life, spreading whispers that no serious man would ever choose someone like her, desperate to reclaim some version of the power she had lost. Then she found out about Tosin. The shock hit her like a slap. She confronted Rachel one evening, storming into the apartment they still technically shared. "Is it true? You're seeing Tosin? My Tosin?" Rachel, calm in a way that surprised even herself, simply said, "He was never yours, Lilian. Not really. Not after that night." "How could you do this to me?" "I didn't do anything to you," Rachel said quietly. "You did this to yourself a long time ago." Lilian froze as Tosin walked in from the kitchen, having been there the whole time. Recognition and horror crossed her face simultaneously. Rachel continued, her voice steady, years of buried pain finally finding release. "I knew, Lilian. For years, I knew you were only close to me because of what I could give you. I heard things, I noticed things. I stayed anyway, because I convinced myself being used quietly was better than being alone loudly. But I don't believe that anymore." Lilian's composure crumbled entirely. She apologized repeatedly, desperately, tears streaming as she reached for Rachel's hands. "Please, I didn't mean for it to go this far. You're truly my friend, please." Rachel pulled her hands back gently, her expression sad but resolute. "I forgive you," she said softly. "I do. Holding on to anger would only hurt me more than you. But forgiveness isn't an invitation back into my life." She paused. "I would like you to move out within the week. I won't interfere with your job, and I wish you well, genuinely, but I'm done." If you've ever had to forgive someone without letting them back into your life like this video right now, because that single boundary is the most powerful lesson in this entire story. Months later, Rachel stood in her parents' garden in Omwaji, surrounded by fairy lights and the people who genuinely loved her, as Tosin knelt before her with a small velvet box, his eyes glistening. "I don't want you for who you're becoming. I want you exactly as you are and exactly as you will always continue to grow into." She said yes before he even finished the sentence. Their relationship, unlike anything Rachel had known before, was built on nothing but honesty, patience, and mutual respect. No manipulation, no hidden agendas, no cruelty disguised as jokes. Lilian, years later, stood at her own wedding, grateful for the new life she had slowly rebuilt after losing Rachel's friendship. Humbled, changed, though never quite as transformed as Rachel had been. Occasionally, in quiet moments, she thought of her old friend, not because she missed the money or the free rides through life, but because she finally understood, far too late, how rare genuine friendship truly was and how badly she had wasted it. The greatest glow-up ain't losing weight or gaining success. It's discovering that your worth was never determined by the people who failed to see it. Protect your kindness, but never be afraid to protect your peace. If this story moved you, don't scroll away without hitting like. Drop a comment about which part hit you hardest and subscribe for more beautiful stories just like this one. Join our growing community of story lovers. We are more than happy to have you here. Rachel's story is a reminder that peace is worth more than any friendship built on humiliation, and yours is too. I'll see you in the next one.